Well before Devon Witherspoon wore the number 21 in the Seahawks defensive backfield, it was worn by Paul Moyer, the former safety and secondary coach and longtime radio broadcaster for the team, returns to Seahawks Forever today. We're going to talk about Witherspoon and maybe the fit that Moyer sees in Mike Macdonald's scheme. We're going to talk about that scheme, some of the players in it, some of those who have departed, and some of the new faces and how he feels like they'll fit in. Also asked him how he watches the game as a former secondary player. Interesting answer. You're going to want to stick around for that. And then he sums up his feelings about the Pete Carroll era and the lasting legacy that remains after he has moved on. Paul Moyer, my very special guest today on the show.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Hit that like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and hit the bell so you get notification of all new episodes. Subscribe on any audio podcast platform you prefer, but if you want to hear ads without episodes, let's do that the other way around. If you want to hear episodes without ads, if you just want to hear ads, I suppose there's a place you can do that. But no, you can subscribe for just 99 cents a month right now and get ad-free episodes on Spotify. There, I was able to spit it out. And if you just want to support me or the show, you can buy me a coffee or a beer, as it were. All those links are in the description. Let's get to it. Paul Moyer, his second appearance here on the show. Love talking to him and just the way he explains things and his honest assessment of the team and what he sees on the field and what he sees in the future for the Seahawks under new leadership. Here's my conversation earlier with Paul Moyer. Paul, thanks for coming back on the show. Your second appearance, old number 21, back on Seahawks Forever. How's your offseason been?
It's been good, busy. You know, I have a day job. I'm a president of First Hill Trust Company, and that keeps me busy and traveling. And then I have this fun job where I get to talk about the Seahawks and their broadcast, and just trying to keep up with it. I'm probably not as good as I should be, but I love this time of year. I love the draft, and I love when we start getting the OTAs and start seeing what the team's all about.
We were chatting a little bit before I hit record. You haven't had a chance to meet Coach Macdonald yet, but I reached out to you right after the hire for your thoughts, the things you'd heard about him, your impression from afar, certainly an overwhelmingly positive one. How do you feel now, a couple of months into this, from what you've seen and how they've gone about their business?
Yeah, I think what I like about it, and it's going to carry over from when it was Pete and John, their relationship. It's very collaborative. I was really curious to see how they put together their coaching staff. That concerned me. Just the length of time. I wasn't sure if Coach Macdonald had enough relationships in the league to be able to go get maybe some of the coaches that he admired and wanted. I was confident that John did. John is on the road. John knows everybody. He's got a great pedigree and great network connections. But I started to get concerned. Okay, are they going to get the guys they really want? Develop the relationships needed to have a great coaching staff. But the one thing about Mike Macdonald that just stood out for me from the get-go, the X's and O's, we get it. This guy is I never say there's geniuses in coaching. There's nobody's. It's a 100-yard field. There's 11 guys on each side of the ball. There's only so much you can do, but he has an intellect that is top of the line for me. But the part that I always look for is somebody who's unique, and that is when they walk in a room, do they command a presence? And I've met a few guys in my life. One of them was Jim Moore, not Junior, but Jim Moore. The first time I met him, man, he just had a presence about him. Bill McCartney, the old coach from Colorado. Boy, when he walked in a room, there was there was this wow factor. And Coach Macdonald has that. He's just his presence, the way he articulates his message. And to go along with his intellect, I was really excited for the hire.
You talked about the coaching staff, really only one holdover, although Nico Thorpe is still with the organization and still has a role. But Karl Scott, he coaches the guys that you're the most familiar with in the secondary. He was retained. What did you see from him in that first year of him being in the organization that you like?
Well, more about what they talk about him. Just quality person, great communicator. Obviously very intellectual. The one thing you bring in a whole new staff, a whole new scheme. Man, I'm telling you, it takes time to get everybody on the same page on that. My first year in the NFL, 1983, with Chuck Knox, they brought in a new staff. We had a ton of talent. We were good. We had turnovers, but statistically, we weren't great. But at the end of the year, we got pretty good and got into the playoffs. 84 kicks in, and we have what I think a record will never be broken. 63, I think, turnovers that year. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And so I was a little nervous when you bring all new coaches. There's no continuity. So I think it's good. I expect, particularly in the secondary, even though we've got some new guys there. But I just think the message, keeping something like that the same, it was really important. So I was glad that was one talking with John Schneider off the side. That was the one guy he really was hoping to keep.
Okay. Let's talk about John for a minute. He keeps getting asked over and over in different ways because people are trying to pull a different answer out of him, and he keeps answering it the same way, that his MO this offseason hasn't really changed, that Pete's role, even though contractually he had final say on the roster, that he didn't invoke that very often. Have you seen anything from John in the last couple of months that you think is a little bit different now that he's essentially working autonomously?
Well, first of all, John doesn't really give a lot away, even though he's transparent. He is transparent. I mean, what you see is what you get with John.
Yeah.
But John doesn't give secrets. And John's never going to say anything negative about Pete. Not that there probably is anything negative to say about Pete. And I think, the message he's saying is it's not going to change much. Pete Carroll never really overruled me. But Pete's also really strong in what he wants. And, you've heard John, he'd be in, Pete would be in John's office saying, have you seen this guy? Have you watched this film?
Right.
And, that has a way of influencing you as well. And Pete has a strong personality. Even though I think John is going to go after the guys he wants. But I've heard him say, Pete influenced me at times. Maybe I shouldn't get this guy. Maybe that's a risk if it fails. It's not worth that relationship. So I just think this gives John a chance to really be free and say, okay, this is the guy I really want no matter what. I'm willing to, even if it fails, to take that one on the chin. And I think, Mike is going to, while they say maybe our philosophy with the players we're looking at hasn't changed, I think it's changed a little. Just look at the linebackers they brought in.
Yeah.
These are cover guys. They're undersized guys. They're 230 pounds for the most part. They can run. They're sideline to sideline guys, high energy. We had two other linebackers. They were 250 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
They a lot of tackles, not a lot of interceptions, not a lot of forced fumbles. You're going to get these guys. I think we're going to get interceptions. They read the quarterback well. They can cover downfield, whether we're playing a Tampa 2 or a tight end runs a corner out. These guys can run with them. So I've already seen a quick change in that. I don't know if that's an influence from Pete before or not. So we'll see. I think our defense is going to look different than in the past, and it's mainly in that you've got to have 6 guys, 7 guys who can cover. And whether that's linebackers, safeties, corners, I think you're going to see a big mix. We may not be the biggest guys, in the back 7, but you're going to be able to cover and run with crossing routes. And if they run fly sweeps, you're going to have guys who are going to be able to run with that as well. So I think there's a little change in philosophy. We'll see how it plays out.
When you talk about the change in the linebacker room, your wheelhouse, the safety group, huge changes, really kind of kicked off the offseason. The announcement that on the same day that Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs, they were moving on from them. They bring in Rayshawn Jenkins, Devon Wallace. How'd you feel about the big change, moving on from those 2 big names, big time players, big presences for both of them in the locker room? And how do you feel about the new guys?
Look, I think losing Diggs and Jamal Adams, and you're right, they're big personalities. They're former Pro Bowl guys. I didn't want to lose Diggs. I think he's still a good player, but the value that he was giving us, I thought he missed some tackles. The 49er game popped out at me, that first play of the game. That to me was on him. And, just, the way they ran that sweep, or I guess it wasn't a fly sweep, it was a sweep to McCaffrey or a handoff. And they had practiced that. You just can't give up those kind of big plays. And you're a free safety. I've got to count on you to make that tackle as well. And so while I didn't want to lose him, I said, well, for the money, we can get somebody in there that will be just as productive or close to as productive and be able to spread some of the money around. Jamal, I think we all knew, that's an injury thing. With that cap, there's just no way. Now, I think by bringing in, Rayshawn Jenkins and Devon Wallace, and that's not settled at all, by the way, in my opinion. I think Jarek Reed, if he comes back from his knee injury, I liked what I saw from him last year. I really liked him in training camp, and throwing Kobe Bryant too.
Yeah.
I think this is an open competition. Julian Love, certainly Pro Bowler. I think his spot's more than solidified. But I think what this does more than anything that we didn't have last year is you have 5 safeties that could go cover a slot. That's pretty good. And I think that fits in again to Mike Macdonald's defense. You want as much versatility as you can. You got to be able to blitz, more hybrid guys across the board. So you went from a traditional free safety in Diggs, a blitzing kind of outside linebacker in Adams, to now you got guys that can do, I think, more of a utility knife concept.
That seems to be the trend in the league, that we're getting away from the kind of the traditional split safeties where one's a box guy and one's more of a cover guy, traditional strong, traditional free. We're playing more sub packages, a lot more third safety on the field. Teams are using that position to cover the slot. Does that all kind of work together with sort of this market correction that we're seeing this offseason, where a lot of big name high price safeties were released? A couple of them are still in the market. Diggs is one of them. Justin Simmons is still a free agent out there. A lot of higher priced guys teams have moved on from them in lieu of kind of saving some money at that position, or going with a different style of player. How do you explain that?
Well, I think probably I just think it's the way the game's changed.
Mm-hmm.
We're run defense is really important. You got to be a good tackler, but I don't need a safety coming up there and taking on fullbacks anymore. Maybe they got to use their hands on some pulling linemen at times. This is a coverage league now. That's just bottom line. You have to be able to cover. You have to be able to protect the middle of the field. The middle of the field used to be protected by us hitting people, right? I'd say, I intimidate you. You come here, do that again. You're on the sideline in the hospital. Which
now you can't hit anybody.
No, actually, you get fined for even saying something like that, right? So this is now a coverage league, and you've got to be able to make plays on the ball. So it comes down to youth. It comes down to speed. It comes down to be able to be extremely versatile. You get 3 wide receivers, 4 wide receivers. They do these, motions across. I mean, there's just so much going on. You have to be able to match up with that. And I just think that's what it is. So now you can say, I don't need that 30-year-old safety who's lost a step. You lose a step in this league now, man, you're not for long. It's just, they don't play as much zone. You really want to try and match up let me rephrase that. It turns into man, right? I mean, these are man zone comps that the zones turn to man. You've got to be able to match up. So if you can't run in this league, man, you're just not going to be around to make the big bucks anymore.
Like to get your thoughts on a couple specific players. One of the big questions that we really won't see for a few weeks until they actually start practicing on the field. They started OTAs today, but it's all just kind of workout and physical therapy type stuff. But once they start practicing, to see where guys are and where the new staff plans to play them. One of the big question marks is last year's outstanding rookie, Devon Witherspoon, 5th overall pick. Played a lot more slot last year than I think people expected when he came out. It was certainly effective there because he's closer to the ball and he makes plays. seeing what Mike Macdonald did with Kyle Hamilton in Baltimore, a lot of people assume, well, that fits Devon Witherspoon's play style. Of course, he's going to play him there. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that he doesn't see Witherspoon as maybe his Humphrey, where he talks about wanting to lock down the outsides. Where's your gut feeling? Where do you suspect they'll play Devon?
It's a great question, because I think you can play him anywhere you want. But I also
Where
think
would you like to see him play?
Well, I think because of his blitzing ability, and you're going to see, this is going to be a very different blitz package. You're going to see guys coming from all over the place. We're not going to be sitting there in a normal stance with your hands on our knees, just sitting behind a guard at linebacker. These guys are going to be walking around a little bit. They're going to be probably a little bit vertical. You're going to see some of them in gaps. So I think it would be hard to take Witherspoon and say, we're just going to put you outside. You're a cover guy now, when he's such a playmaker inside, both in tackling, causing fumbles, being able to blitz. So I'm not sure. What I'm curious to see is if we start moving corners. And so, in the past, Pete never moved a corner. You played left corner, you played right corner. But if all of a sudden you get a wide receiver out wide, Riq Woolen, to me, I don't want him in the box. I don't. I mean, get him out wide. He's improved a little bit in the run game, but it's just not his game. If I can get somebody out wide and let him use his length and his speed, I don't want to say a bit of a Richard Sherman, but it's always going to be now more on the wide side of the field. And then that way I can put Witherspoon. I don't know really where he's coming from. At the same time, look, if I've got a matchup, I don't know, pick a receiver that you want to shut down. Why wouldn't I put Witherspoon on him all over the field? And I think and listening to Mike Macdonald, they're not opposed to that. They're willing to do some of those things. So I'm just curious to see how it plays out. But I think with Mike Macdonald, the way he likes to do his blitz package, man, you put Witherspoon outside the whole time. That's one way for an offense to say, all right, we got him. We don't even have to worry about him. We'll go ahead and work the other 10 guys on the field.
A lot of people feel like Riq had sort of a sophomore slump last year, had some struggles tackling. There's some question as to whether he was maybe not 100% healthy. That shoulder might have been impacting that, but that he took a step back, might have regressed last year. What did you see from him?
Well, I thought even Riq, his rookie year, look, if Riq doesn't have 6 interceptions, he's not making the Pro Bowl. He has still a long way to go technique-wise to be a complete corner, not just a cover corner, but a complete corner. I think this will be the year for the next step. Last year, I just said, look, they had film on him a whole year. They knew his strengths and weaknesses. In this league, Chuck Knox, you say this all the time. Sorry to bring up these old guys, but
no, I love it.
knowing your weaknesses is more important than knowing your strengths. So you don't put yourself in those bad situations, and you can work on those, because once teams know your weakness, they're going to isolate you on it. And so, it's at any position. And so second year, there's usually can be a learning curve, but can also be a step back. He has the skill. He's great length, great speed. He's good at reading the quarterback. I think he'll have a big jump this year, and we'll see big improvement. But I also want them to put him in the right spot at all time. If they're going to sit there, all of a sudden he's on the tight end side because he's playing right corner, and that's what he has to do. And they bring a wide receiver and tight, or all of a sudden motion him across where he's now up against the tight end. They're going to run it at him. That's not look. We're asking for failure in that situation.
So it must have tickled you last year when they took a defensive back in the first round, because leading up to the draft, fans said it would never happen because they hadn't ever drafted a corner that high. Earl Thomas, really the only secondary player that they ever drafted that high under Pete Carroll. As I look at this draft this year, and you listen to John in the background saying best player available always, no matter what, right? And you start to see how this draft seems like it's going to fall, and the runs on certain positions. It's going to start with the quarterbacks. The tackles are a big deal in this draft. They're going to go. The receivers, teams are going to start clamoring for them. It's a good corner group, a good secondary group. Those guys are going to get pushed down. It would blow people's minds. But could you, especially if you talk about putting Witherspoon inside, well, now that opens up the question of like, who are the guys going to be on the outside? That gets a lot more competitive. Could you see them going secondary again in the first round?
Ooh, probably not. Never say never with John. Look, John's traded back more. Best player when he decides to stop trading back. Right. We don't have a second round pick.
Trade back is a player. Yeah.
Yes. So let's kind of play that 16th pick out. Look, I think if Troy Fontenot is there, I like him. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, he should be a guard." I go, "Look, this guy can play tackle. His feet are so good." And I think with Abe Lucas, we don't know that whole injury prospect. I've thrown this out, and I haven't gotten anybody say, "Yeah, that's a good idea." If you drafted Troy, I might move Abe Lucas into guard. Because I think Troy's feet are that good. Now, I haven't seen him at guard, but Abe's a mauler. So when he does latch on you, I mean, he can move and block down on some defensive tackles. He will move a pile. I'm not saying that's what to do, but if they say, obviously that's a need, and that might be one of the best players. But if that's not there, they feel like, hey, we can get some guards by trading back, get a second round pick. And maybe pick up a linebacker in the second round as well. I see that probably be more of the direction they'll go.
Yeah.
But in this league, man, you need dominant corners. I think we have one dominant one. Witherspoon to me is dominant. He's still got a learning curve. I think Riq Woolen is a very good corner that's still got a lot to learn. But if you put him in the right situation, he can be successful. After that, I think we have good guys, but I don't think they're dominant.
Yeah.
And so, look, if you got a phenomenal lockdown corner, what Mike Macdonald can do with that, oh my goodness. So I don't want to say never, probably not likely, because we have positions we've got to fill. I don't want to reach for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, and the reason why is I think our lineup, just looking at the roster right now, defensively we're pretty good. We need to add some depth at linebacker. I think if you add a safety, a corner, that's great. I think probably need a nose tackle, but I'm counting on the young guys like Cameron Young and Mike Morris. Look, they've got to. You can't always get veterans and free agents. You got to count on your draft to develop.
Yeah.
So I feel pretty good there. The only positions really are the interior offensive linemen that you go, okay, that's a need. We got to do something there. So the rest of the group, you got to go find guys who can become Pro Bowlers early in the draft. Not just, oh, yeah, they've made the team. No, we can go get free agents to make the team. But my first picks, man, I've got to get them close to Pro Bowl type guys. And so that's where you do find the very best player available.
How do you, when you're watching the game or even practice, how do you watch it? This came to me because I had this conversation with a friend of mine who played quarterback, and his answer surprised me. Do you watch the secondary guys from the snap because that's where you played, or do you watch the quarterback because that's what you've been trained to do and everything kind of works off of that? How do you watch the game?
Good question. So I was taught by Tom Catlin, who's one of the great coaches in NFL history. He said, do not follow the ball because your eyes want to follow the ball. I still have a tendency to do that, and I have to remind myself, don't do that. For me now, what I do when I go into a game, I go, what do I want to watch? So I usually watch on our side. I'll watch offensive linemen. I'm going to pick a guard or a tackle. Just kind of watch that. And then I'll immediately look into the secondary as well. Defensively, I always sit there and watch the linebackers. That's my first read. I just want to see, okay, where are they going? Are they getting fooled on play action? Once it's a pass, I immediately go to the secondary. But I got to move around on it too. It's the old days when I was a secondary coach. I sat and watched the secondary. That was my first thing. I just want to see their alignment. I always watch the receivers. And then once I found if it was a pass or a run, then I might go to the ball at that point. But to make game adjustments, you can't follow the ball because I got to know backside. What are they looking for, right? Offensively, did they just see my corner bite on a play action that was away from it? They didn't go to it. And, oh, wow, we're going to come back to this guy. So I've got to be able to coach that up immediately. Say, hey, by the way, when you just did that, let you know they saw that. You know, so you got to make some of those adjustments. But the only thing I ever tell coaches, young coaches, I go, don't follow the ball because you'll learn nothing there. Start with the interior linemen, usually offensively, linebackers, and then from there you can expand out.
I know defense is your area of expertise, but I got to ask you at least a question or two about the offense. The buzz will not go away about the Seahawks' interest in quarterbacks in this draft. They've met with all the top guys. They've had multiple meetings with J.J. McCarthy. The news came out yesterday that Bo Nix is coming in for a top 30 visit with the Seahawks, despite the fact that they made the move a month ago to acquire Sam Howell. Are you buying their interest at all in this quarterback class, or is it just due diligence in case you get that Aaron Rodgers that falls unexpectedly?
Well, yeah, I think probably a little of both, Dan, in that we already know John way back when, you know, he was looking at Josh Allen, he was looking at Patrick Mahomes. I mean, look, and it's not because maybe we don't have a chance to draft the guy, but what if it does fall? You know, you always got to play the what if. And also, well, what if we make a trade that we have the opportunity to get these people? And then 5 years down the road, if they're a free agent or we want to trade for them, I already know enough about them, you know, character-wise, all that stuff. And John is I guess the word would be a gym rat for coaching, right? John used to be on the road all the time. He watches a ton of film. You know, they're as prepared as anybody. So I think, yeah, if the guy was there, you know, you can't pass up on quarterbacks. I mean, it's just, you know, if it's there and it's truly, but in the first round this year, man, I just don't see it. I don't see a quarterback coming in, anybody at the 16th pick that's going to be better than Geno Smith, and maybe not even in Sam Howell. And I think Sam does have some upside. I think there's a ceiling for him, but I think there's some upside. And, you know, maybe you get Bell or not Bo Nix, and he drops into the late second round. Probably not. You know, quarterbacks always go higher than what their actual ranking is from, you know, top 150 because the value of them. But I think it's just a due diligence more than anything. But don't be surprised. Again, if we trade back and start picking up draft picks, I think that's as much as anything for the Seahawks. Hey, we got to know if there's somebody available. I mean, do I think the JJ will be available for us? No. We would have to absolutely love him. Yeah. I mean, love him. And we've already traded for Sam Howell, so I just don't see that happening.
Before I let you go, let me ask you this. You're not allowed to use the Super Bowl victory. What's looking back on the last 15 years of Pete Carroll and his era here in Seattle? Do you have a favorite memory or a favorite story that stands out to you?
Oh, man.
Or even just your overall impression of his
think,
time here in Seattle.
Yeah, I think probably not unlike anybody else. I think it was just the culture he built in that organization, that every single person was treated with respect. And look, I was with Chuck Knox, you know, Tom Flores. Look, that we had a lull there where they, to me, didn't have maybe I'll leave that alone. I won't dog a previous coach. We've had some incredible human beings that treated people right professionally. You know, Mike Holmgren ran a different organization, great guy. But, you know, it was tougher there. I mean, people walked around with a little bit more intimidation. That wasn't Pete. Pete was about, I'm going to uplift everybody. And I'm not saying that's always the best way to run an organization. There's a lot of ways to do it. I mean, New England's been very successful with a coach that ran an intimidating organization.
No.
And Pete, man, you walked in there and he would talk to you. You know, I mean, Pete talks to you like he's your friend. When I would be in the room with him, he would talk about my past and when I was a player and, hey, do you still have good hands? And he just made everybody feel special. When every media, interview or post game, I mean, he answered every question. And even if it was a bad question, he would give you an out on it. And so I think just the way he treated people, and if you walk in that organization, it changed. There were people that I've been with for 20, 30 years, good guys. They turned out to be great guys and women because of Pete. I mean, they elevated their confidence. They didn't have to have this chip on their shoulder anymore. So I just think that is what stood out for me more than anything. There's a million great memories of him. I just think the way he treated people in this community, it goes back to a little bit of, I'm drawing a blank on his name now, and I know him. It's bad when you start getting old. Todd Lywicki. Just to how they took the fans from the Seahawks and they created this brand, the 12s, right? And how Pete took that to another level. How important the fans were. He talked about it all the time. Some people mention it. Pete lived it. And it's why we have had one of the great home field advantages, and I think we'll get that back. So, yeah, a lot of great memories. I'm excited for the future because I think the guy that got Mike Macdonald is the same kind of class. I mean, he's just a good guy. I'm not going to worry about him ever probably being stuck in a bar, getting in a fight. He's very disciplined. I just think, at least I'm hoping this culture continues. And I think that was a big part of why they kept John and why John hired Mike Macdonald.
So do you still have good hands?
I do. It's turned more into my golfing hands now.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
So,
right.
Yeah. But yeah, I work on it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Good stuff. Paul, I really appreciate you being so generous with your time and coming on the show again. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Well, Dan, I'll give you a little plug. I follow you. I learned stuff from you. And wow, sometimes I go, oh, okay, maybe
Well, you chime in. I appreciate that.
There's a few where I go, oh, I'm not sure that's where I would go with that. Right. But I honestly, I watch you. I know you do your work, your homework, and I respect what you throw out there. So, and it's good stuff. So for those who are listening, keep on following Dan.
There you go. You heard it from Paul Moyer himself. It must be true. I appreciate it very much. Very flattering. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
You got it. Thanks for having me on.
We'll talk again soon.
You got it.
Really love the perspective. I guess I hadn't thought of this before. Obviously, the Super Bowl championship will be a big part of Pete Carroll's legacy as we look back on it 5, 10, 20 years from now. But the creation and the culture, the labeling of the 12s and really building up that fan base and giving them an identity that will continue for as long as there is a Seattle Seahawks football team might endure even longer. Love that perspective. Thanks again to Paul. Follow him on Twitter. I'll put his Twitter handle down in the description as well. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and listening. Always appreciated. I'm Dan. Follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever. Forever and always. Go Hawks. Thanks for watching.